Hello, stars. To Jew22 here, and right now we have the first of three main events. It's a triple main event, but this is the first of three. And up next is for the World Wrestling Federation Championship, excuse me. But the World Wrestling Federation champion, the Undertaker. And as of this moment, he is Doom's champion. I mean, for Doom, they have possession of the championship through the Undertaker, and Undertaker has been champion ever since defeating the former champion, Shawn Michaels. And knowing the Undertaker and knowing his track record and knowing what he is capable of, just as much as he was willing to do just about anything to become the World Wrestling Federation champion, he will do he would do a lot more just to hold on to it. And I'm sorry if I keep stumbling on my words. I mentioned before, I do have a little something on my mind, but again, I can't go into it, not yet. But the Undertaker is just coming down with a purpose to hold on to that championship. And the fans are just at awe of the spectacle that is the Undertaker. And I'm not going to take anything away from the man. The man is a legend. There's no doubt that the Undertaker is a legend. Even then, he was a legend before, and he is still a legend now. And you know, my father, Henry Jacobson, he was among the men that faced the Undertaker, especially in his earlier years, all the way up to when my dad was put out of commission. But that's pretty much it. And now, here comes another guy that my dad only fought once, and that was towards the twilight of my dad's career. The man they call Stone Cold Steve Austin. And I have to say, this guy is also a legend. I mean, this guy was the man that saved the then World Wrestling Federation from going into bankrupt. I can't even speak! He saved the World Wrestling Federation from going into bankruptcy and ultimately caused World Championship Wrestling to go into bankruptcy. And, you know, I mean, this is a guy that just was so popular. Like, you know, when he first started out, I mean, he was a bad guy, but nothing he did could, you know, contain the fans. In fact, the fans just ate it up. I mean, they wanted to see Austin do more of the things that he was doing. And then WWE realized, or the World Wrestling Federation realized, that they had something with Austin, and they decided to make him somewhat of an anti-hero. And I could probably say the same thing about this guy right here. The Rock. I mean, come on. This is another legend that you are seeing in front of you. I mean, this is a guy that... I'm sorry, but, you know, The Rock and the millions and millions of The Rock's fans, they love him. Like, I can't think of anybody that I've known that doesn't like The Rock. Like, sure, they may like other people, like, you know, Macho Man Randy Savage. I'm one of those people that like Macho Man Randy Savage and Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant, Bruno Sammartino, some of the big names that came before The Rock. But The Rock was just like no other superstar. The guy had it. He had the it factor. He had the charisma. He had the ability, and the people just ate it up, much like they did for Austin, and much like they did for Undertaker throughout the course of his entire career for the Undertaker. But, you know, you have three of the biggest stars in the match at the same time, and guess what? It's for the World Wrestling Federation, Championship. But, you know, I mean, it is for one of the richest prizes in the business, so it's only natural that you have three of the biggest in the Attitude Era just go at each other. So I'm just as much of a fan of this as anybody watching this. Anyway, match underway as, okay, The Undertaker and Steve Austin tie up, but obviously Undertaker has the power advantage of against both of his opponents in Steve Austin and The Rock. Now The Rock going right after Undertaker. Now, unlike the last time we had a triple threat match where it was Ryoko, Lita, and Genetera for the Women's Championship of the World, unlike the last match, this one is last man standing wins. In other words, you can be eliminated by pinfall or submission. You can't be counted out. You cannot be disqualified, and falls count anywhere, and the last man standing wins the match and is the World Wrestling Federation champion. So, unlike last time where it was one fall to a finish, this one is whoever the last man standing is that wins. So that's all I have to say about it. Alright. A back suplex onto The Rock by The Undertaker. I mean, if I was either one of the challengers, I would try to take out the champion and then fight amongst each other after that to determine a new champion. But that's just me, though. I mean, that's my strategy if I was in there, but I'm not in there. But then again, it kind of is easier to say that up here in the booth where I am, as opposed to being down there in the ring. And The Undertaker going right after The Rock. I mean, The Rock is one of the few guys that has had success against The Undertaker, because most guys that go up against The Undertaker, they have a terrible win-loss record against him. Other times, they just get destroyed by The Undertaker. And usually in the latter case, that's usually what happens to the lesser, the less fortunate souls that take on The Undertaker. They don't last very long. Because, I mean, to go up against The Undertaker... Now, wait a minute. A sleeper hold on The Rock. And if The Rock passes out, then The Rock will be eliminated and will be down to a one-on-one match. And The Rock... Well, The Rock just passes out and had to tap out. So now The Rock is eliminated. So now we're down to a one-on-one match between Steve Austin, Stone Cold Steve Austin, and The Undertaker. So The Rock is eliminated, and in fact, he didn't even last 3 minutes in that match. I'm surprised that has happened, but although if we had this type of rule in the women's match, that match would have been over a long, long time ago than it actually did, but it turned out to be a much better match than I thought it would be. But it was just a huge oversight on my part, really. But hey, mistakes happen, but it was a happy mistake, as Bob Ross, the painter, would always say. Anyway, now we're down to Steve Austin and The Undertaker, and these two have had wars in the past. I mean, we've seen them go at each other in, 1999, a little bit of 1998 before that, as well as, heck, they've had so many matches against one another, but they had really, really big matches. I think the one match that gets forgotten is some of the matches they had in 1999, whereas the matches they had in 1997 and 1998 are legendary, no doubt about that, as well as even the matches in 2000, 2001, I think, all the way up to when Steve Austin ultimately retired, and it was largely because of a neck injury that he suffered in a match at SummerSlam, which oddly enough is the name of the show that we have, but in the World Wrestling Federation against Owen Hart, in which Owen Hart delivered a tombstone pile driver, somewhat like what The Undertaker does, except, Austin landed really, really bad on his neck. I don't know if the intent was to injure him, or actually it kind of was. But the fact remains, Austin was never the same after that injury. I mean, yeah, he managed to survive a couple more years after that, but ultimately he had to retire just because of the trauma in his neck. And if he had not retired, he probably would be, He probably would be in a wheelchair at this moment, but thank God he's not. And in fact, he's a, you know, Austin may be rough around the edges while in the ring, but in the outside or outside the ring, he's a really nice guy. Is Steve Austin, and you know, Steve Austin, say what you want about the guy, but you know, he's a good person. He's a really good guy, and you know, he has his own podcast and he holds nothing back. I respect that man. And I could probably say the same thing about The Rock, even though The Rock is not there anymore. And now, wait, what's Austin doing? What's he doing? And oh, wait a minute! Wait a minute! A tombstone pile driver onto The Undertaker? And is that enough to beat him? 1, 2, no! Kick out by The Undertaker. I suppose you're going to have to do more than that to The Undertaker if you're going to win, although he is a little bit staggered at this point from his own move, or having taken his own move. The Undertaker, I mean. Of course, knowing The Undertaker, he's not going to give up like that. He's not going to give up without a fight. I mean, as surprised as I was when The Rock got eliminated... Wait a minute. Oh, now here it is from the originator. You can't do it any better than the man who does it originally. The tombstone pile driver onto Steve Austin, and the pin. Here it goes. 1, 2, no! Kick out by Steve Austin, but I think he might have used every last bit of energy he might have had left just to kick out of that one. And if you're Undertaker, you really need to work on the neck or whatever you can, because, you know, Austin, you know, he still has neck injuries stemming from the matches that I mentioned to you guys about earlier. A snapmare, and then an elbow right to the neck of The Undertaker, so Steve Austin just giving it a little bit more, or just giving some right back to The Undertaker is what I was trying to say. And now Undertaker gets kicked outside the ring. Now both men are on the outside, but remember, it's falls count anywhere. You can't be disqualified, so these guys can do whatever they want to each other, and it's fair game. And now, wait, a Boston Crab onto The Undertaker. Now, The Undertaker, this is not a normal match, so if Undertaker taps out, he loses the championship to Steve Austin. But Austin has that thing in tight, though. Is Undertaker going to tap out? Yes, he does. But that was a really painful move on the part of Steve Austin, and the winner of the match, and new World Wrestling Federation Champion, Stone Cold Steve Austin. So, it's official. We now have the main event for later on tonight, or the third of 3 main events, I should say. And it's official. It's going to be the team of Via Vinyl and Link against the team of the new women's champion, Genetera, and this guy, Stone Cold Steve Austin. So, I mean, that's a really odd pair between Steve Austin and Genetera, but that's exactly what we're going to have for the main event, or the third main event of tonight. But up next is the main event, or the next main event of 3, and that will be coming up right after this.